So in the previous video, we removed this Sprinter 1L card from a TRS-80 Model I, and then I completely stripped it down to the blank PCB. I think we talked about this in the previous video. I did this as one of my viewers, Pascal in France, is going to recreate this unit. I think it's actually going to be sold by a gentleman named Ian out of Australia. I'm not sure, but the idea was to get this to the point where Model 1 owners could buy a reproduction of this and install in their Model 1s. So he had reverse engineered a fair chunk of it, and I just made the decision to go ahead and strip the board down so we could get detailed photos of the PCB layout for him then to have the boards recreated. I believe he's got his order off to China for an initial run of these. So at some point, hopefully I'll post an update video that really goes through the kit, building the kit, the assembly and stuff. But anyhow, I wanted to go ahead and reassemble my board and see if it still works. I'm looking at the PCB. I think there's a couple spots where I didn't fully get holes desoldered so I can reinsert components. And there's one right there that I think I need to hit again. So I'm going to add some fresh solder to that hole and then reuse the desoldering tool to try to clear it again. Some fresh solder on there. A little bit on both sides. And I'm just looking through all the holes on the board to make sure they seem well clear. I don't want to get halfway through assembly and discover there's one right there that's also not clear. Just a little easier to do this on the board now than to do it with a bunch of components stuffed on. So let me see if I can now get those clear. Make sure the tool's heated up here, and it is. And of course don't want to lift traces doing this, so it is kind of a delicate balance. Yeah, that one cleared out just fine. And that one cleared out just fine. So that does look better. So the next thing I'm considering in this is I'd really like to socket all the ICs. They weren't originally socketed, but I just think it would be a little nicer build and be a little easier to potentially pull chips off to, to test and that kind of stuff. So the question becomes, with those components socketed, is there enough clearance inside of my Model 1 for everything to fit? This is my Model 1 that I modded in a previous video to have a cable between the keyboard and the motherboard, and that was done just simply to make this machine easy to take apart, put together, to hack on, etc. I think in the original disassembling video of the Sprinter, I commented that this is my, oh, it's missing all but one of the rubber feet, so it doesn't sit flush. Such is life. Let me retrieve the motherboard here out of this machine and we'll take a quick peek at it. So there's the motherboard we uninstalled from. The motherboard actually goes in upside down. Yeah, it actually goes in this orientation. I don't take TRS-80s apart enough to remember. So what I need is enough room under that board. So let me look at how that board mounted back in here. Come on, give me back the motherboard. Well, I dropped it down in there, and I'll be damned if I can get it back out. Come on, lift up out of there. There you go. See, this is a heavily modded machine. In an old video, we replaced the character generator ROM with this assembly here. I've talked about it before, where I've got multiple character sets available. It's just a flash memory. You could put your own character sets in there. You select one of 16 character sets on the dip switches. There's a similar build to this with a flash memory. It's upside down here, plugged into the original ROM sockets. And again, it's got a large flash ROM in it. I can use the dip switches here to set which level 2 basic or even level 1 basic I want in place. This has got level 1 available. Level 2 I tweaked slightly for some other stuff I was doing. But anyhow, this board mounted in here. I'm trying to remember here because it had to be this way. Yeah, it's this way. Cap's been folded over. Set in here like slow, raised up slightly so it plugged down in, but it mounted basically there. I'm going to use a bit of blue painter's tape to just kind of tack it down in place. And then I'm going to sit it down in the Model 1 and just kind of take a look at alignment, looking at height down into the case, just to get a feel where, whether if these chips are socketed, if there's enough room for it still to sit in. Will that kind of tack that in place? It will. Sits down at, oh, I covered up one of the, well, that didn't work so very well. I think I'm going to go ahead and put in the pin so I can actually plug that in to the Z80 socket, and that way it'll mount at the height that's going to be in the machine. So we'll jump in and do that next. Hopefully I've still got some decent correct pin headers here. We'll dig. I don't like using these ones with the 0.1 pins just because the pins are very large. And I've got a number of these, and these work much better for this. They've got a small round pin so they plug into the IC socket well. These are fairly spendy, but I was able to get some surplus, relatively inexpensive, and of course took them all, and I've slowly burned through them all. If we go back and look at the photos, we can see that these were on the outside pins here. So let me find a 40-pin socket to aid with alignment. Sockets are floating around here. Just grab a 40-pin solder tail. Cut one of these to length. Oh, and they must be 80 pin because I got exactly what looks like 240 pin socket. See if I can get that to plug down in there. I'm really just going to use this for alignment so that I can solder them in and have reasonable assurance that they're square. So these two row of pins, there's the 40 pin socket the Z80 goes into, and they're the ones that are offset here, so they're going to go into that set of holes, hopefully. Hopefully I can get those to set. Seat down. You can see that I've got a bent pin, it looks like. That drops in okay there. I'm just checking to see if I've got all the holes cleared out here. It feels like I do. I think it's just a matter of finagling this down in there. This acts like there's a pin that's misaligned. I think this is going to work better if I remove these. Assuming I can get them back out of the, oh, that's pretty. The screwdriver's magnetized and covered in component leads. Let's pry him back up out of there. Hopefully not bending the pins. And see if I can get these to sit in individually. They do go on the back side of the board here. I think I was trying to insert them on the front of the board. That would have been kind of tragic. There's a hole there that's not clear enough for those to come through. I think it's going to be this. Okay, so that one goes in. Okay. All the pins have come through. Let me look down through. I see the hole that's the problem. Okay. We'll clear that hole. And resolder vac. It is this one right here. Yeah, I see solder on this side. Oh, I turned off the desoldering station. Let's let it heat up for a minute. Kind of looking forward to the kit. I will definitely get one or two from either Pascal or I believe Ian. You see Ian on eBay. He sells, you know, Model 4 graphics cards and all kinds of stuff. And in the emails with Pascal in France, I believe that's who's actually going to, I guess, manufacture and sell these or whatever. I've been asked, I'll just say it here, by Pascal not to release his artwork. I've got his artwork, his Gerber files, etc., and I will not be releasing those. Don't know if I'll do a run of boards for myself or not. Once he's finished, I may do that. I've got his permission to do that. But again, I won't be selling these. But I will eventually do a build, and will provide info in that build about how to obtain one yourself. I don't know the timing of this. There you go, you seated through. Let's see now if I can get the 40-pin socket back on without bending things. And I will leave this 40-pin socket on here to protect those pins through the majority of this build, but it's not down flush. I want it down flush. That'll get me the maximum amount of height. That looks flush from that side. Get what I hope are the soldering glasses so I can see a little better. That row looks flush. I'm going to just tack down the two end pins. Then make sure those are all seated up flush. Those look good, and by using the 40-pin socket, I've got a good alignment. These 40-pin sockets are a 600 mil device, so there should be 600 mils between the pins, and this will just get the pin headers on nice and square. I'm happy with that. Or am I? That could be a little better. Or pop down. Yeah, I guess I'm going to have to reflow each corner and just make sure that, yep, that one moved a tiny bit. Let's go ahead and solder these up. Actually, before I go any further, one more validation I'm on the correct pins, and I am. So it's on the correct side of the board, etc. Even though this board wasn't originally manufactured with IC sockets for the ICs, I'd really like to socket everything if I can. We'll find out here once we get this together by plugging this board onto the Model 1 motherboard and kind of taking a look down inside of the case. We flow these two end pins. You know, there's no reason this shouldn't work. Put back together. I haven't lifted any traces in all the work I've done on it. I did create a scratch on it slightly with a screwdriver, knocking the solder mask kind of off above 3 traces, but the traces look fine. Get the 2 end pins I used to tack it down again, just to make sure they're flowed okay. The spot I just talked about where I knocked the silk screen off is right here. I should have actually protected the board, which I'm going to do now with some blue painter's tape, so I can just kind of get under there and gently remove that 40 pin socket. Should have actually done this before, but I didn't. I should be able to just pry him out of there gently. Being careful not to bend the pins. The pins all look good. And I will take the Model 1 motherboard wherever it got stuck. Could I have really lost that motherboard? That's pretty amazing. There it is. Sprinter plugs down onto the Model 1 right here. It's seated in well. It's aligned correctly. We'll now drop that down into the bottom of the case. And take a look for clearance. Got a wire in the way here. Take a peek in there. Ooh, it's going to be really tight. It's going to be really tight down on that end of the PCB. Now there's not going to be enough room to socket the logic devices on one end of the PCB. It's just not going to have the clearance up against the bottom of the case. Well, this is why I checked first before just blindly forging ahead. So this end of the PCB, this corner right here, is actually resting up against this raised edge in here, so there's very little clearance there. Very little clearance, so I'm not going to be able to socket it at least the two devices down here. So that's kind of a shame, but it is what it is. So go ahead and remove the card. Trying not to bend the pins. Well, that's why we did this to test. I'm going to put this socket back on for now to protect those pins. We've got there's the original socket that came out. It's missing pins. It's really trash. I'll throw it away. I'll replace it with a new socket. And we have a handful of parts here. This is all the original parts that come out of the board, the original resistors, resistor pack. All of this is here. So I will be putting original components back in. These are TTL devices that have now been soldered in, unsoldered, and going to be soldered back in again. There's potential I've damaged one of them from heat or whatever, but we'll find out. So let's get them sorted. 138, 09, 02, LS74, LS123, LS04, LS30, I think that's LS173. I don't need the Z80 at this point. And I'm kind of debating the order to do this, whether I should do all the discretes first. And if you recall in the previous video, there's 4 1K ohm resistors that sit here, but they're so close together. This one was on the back side of the board because it would bump up against this package. I'm going to mount these 2 on the front of the board and the other 2 on the back of the board, I believe. Debating whether to actually do the work here for the resistor pack and then the socket next. And I think that actually makes some sense. And I took the blue painter's tape off to help protect the board. Let's see if we can get, actually let's do the resistor pack next. I need to flip this white sheet over. It's got my detailed notes on it. So the resistor pack, this is the one we removed. It's got a dot on it for pin 1, and I indicated pin 1 here. And it goes in right here. We'll tack the outside leads. A little tricky to solder here. Don't have a lot of working room, but that's okay. Package is square enough. And yeah, it's a little tight working in there up against that pin header, but that's okay. The pin header has to go in before the Z80 socket. Otherwise you'd be trying to solder up underneath an IC socket, which obviously you can't do. So a little bit of thought on the reassembly order here is required. All those pins are resoldered. If I'd have put the 40 pin socket in first, I wouldn't have been able to solder this row of pins here that get covered up. Let's get the 40 pin socket in. and it's got issues on a couple of the pins going in. If I've got a higher quality socket here, you might have a machine pin in here, and I might not. I have a machine pinned pulled socket here that I might be able to use. It is a pull. I prefer a machine pin. I don't normally stock machine pin just because they're expensive, and I didn't actually expect to find one in here, and I'm not. That's okay. I do have these that are machine pinned. I could conceivably use two of them. I've got a hole there that's not clear. You kind of saw that when I tried to put the other socket on. I could actually use two of these. Cut one up. I may do that just so it's a height-wise they're going to be the same height. And I'll tackle that in a second. Let me get that one hole that wasn't cleared out cleared. Even though I did that inspection, there's still some holes with solder in them, enough that can't get a pin through. It didn't flow well the other side, so I'm going to add solder on the other side as well. It's possible there's a little bit of something caught in there. That cleared out just fine. Work him out of there. Inspect this guy quick. There's no bent pins. The socket itself is a little bit flexed from the heat. Let's see here, Z80 pin 1 is package pin 1, the notch is there, pin 1 is there, so that's lined up well. That went into place just fine. Yeah, I'll go ahead and use that pull. You probably saw me pull that socket in a previous video from something I salvaged. As always, I tack the corners. I look at it to see that it's flush. And it is, and because of that slight bit of bow, for me heating it to remove, I'm going to put some pressure down on it and just tack one of the pins here in the middle to help hold it flush. Hopefully without burning my finger. Go ahead and solder him in. It's kind of like assembling a kit here that wasn't a kit, that I turned into one, so we could get a good visual of all of the copper traces, so that the reproduction board will be as close as possible. you know, to the original board from what's now decades ago. Reflow the two end pins just to make sure. And as you can see, we don't have a whole lot of working room down through here. Yeah, the mechanical envelope of the Model 1 really wasn't designed to accommodate expansion cards. So it took some creative engineering. You know, on this board there's the big slot in it for the post in the bottom of the Model 1 case to poke up through. Don't like what just happened there. Don't see any issues. I'm going to go ahead and put this socket back over these sets of pins just to protect them from handling here, and we have that corner put back together. Nice. Someplace in the parts I scattered everywhere are the original resistors. Where'd they go? There they are. There's 4 1K. There should have been a 5th, I thought, 1K. And the 470K. I wonder where that... I swear there was an X. There's 4 of them. Nope. Oh, I've got resistors everywhere. Okay. We've got the 5 1K. And that's these 4 on the diagonal here. So I'm going to take 2 of these. Straighten the pins out a bit. Make sure the pins will go through, and they won't. A small amount of solder on the pins is enough to keep them from going back through the holes. I may not be able to reuse these resistors. Ouch, that lead got rather hot. So I was trying to pull some of the solder off. Okay, that lead's okay. That lead still has a bit of solder on it. I got a good width here. And there and there. Is it on a 0.5 center? Or 0.4 center? It's more like on a 4.5. Let's see if this will work. Brown, black, red. See if we can have any luck. If I got that width. Well, that may have been on a 0.4 center. Yeah, I do believe that was on a 0.4 and not a 0.45 center. Would help if I had glasses on I could see with. thinking now. It was actually on a 0.5. So we'll rebend it on 0.5. Let's see if it'll drop down through. Square these up. This is going to be this guy. Still no luck. I hate flexing these leads this many times, but let's go back to 0.45. Go there. Whoa. Holy, not working well there, Batman. Geez, 0.5 maybe? I can't believe I'm struggling that much to get this in. Look to be bent to 90 degrees. It's going to be from there to there. Well, that was kind of all over the place. Okay. 0.5 centers, and there's enough lead there to solder on both sides. We'll take another 1K. The leads out. These are the original resistors that came off the board. There's part of me that thinks I should just replace them with new ones, but make sure I've removed enough solder. The leads will cleanly go through. And they do. Bend U on the 0.5. Don't have a lot of working lead length here. Hopefully I can get that one in next to where'd you go shooting off? You're going to go in that hole. You're going to go in that hole. There's enough lead length there to solder. A little bit of blue tape. Hopefully, that piece of blue tape is dead. Kind of hold them in place while the board's upside down, and we'll tack those 4 pins, or actually solder them. The board originally had 3 of these. I think I've already said this a couple times. 3 of these on the front of the board. This center one here was on the front of the board, and then it had the 4th one here on the back. I'm going to go ahead and put 2 of them on the back, just because it'll create a bit more clearance. Make this a little easier to do. So it's not exactly original, but that's okay. Didn't check to see if the leads would go through the holes first. Now that one's fine. That one's fine. We'll get you. And I've got the gold band to this edge. I'll follow that on the back side. This one's going to be a little bit tricky to get in there just because there's so much stuff to work around here. He's going to go right there. One more, 1K. Can straighten out the lead. It's just check to see if he'll go through, and he does. He does. He's going to go from there. To there, if I can get the lead through. A little bit of tape again, so that's, like I say, a slight divergence from how it was originally assembled. But for me, it's a little bit cleaner assembly. Got a lead right there, a lead right there. I felt like that one shifted. I was soldering him, I guess not. One right there, and one that's going to be tricky to get at down in here without melting the socket. Okay, I can see I'm going to want to also hit those two with some solder on the back side of the board. It's all pretty tricky fit. You can see that there's a despiking cap, I believe. No, it's not a despiking cap. It's where one of the wire leads attaches. That gets those two back in place. There is the 470K. Over here is R6. That lead spacing looks even wider, although I can see where the original bend for this one was, so I should be able to just bend in the same spot, hopefully. There's a 470K that went right there. I'll tack it in from the front and solder it from the back. There was this one additional 1K ohm. Let me find the picture that shows it. Oh, wait a minute, there's two more 1K ohms floating around here. There's 1K on the back, 1K on the back. Oh, there's the 330 ohm there. Hopefully I didn't. Oh, there's the 330. There's a 330 here as R5. That's why for a second I thought I had an extra resistor floating around. Yeah, oh come on, I'm eyeballing where to bend here. Rather than try to measure it, because that wasn't nearly as successful as I would have liked before. So 330 there is our 5. And of course orange, brown, 3.3 with 1 0, or 330 ohm. Tack it from the front. And actually solder it from the back. Now we come around to that extra 1K, which is in this photo here. It's down in this corner of the board. And it is the one here with the longer leads on it, I believe, that went, and it goes from power rail there it's got plenty of lead length. Goes from the power rail there to, and then was, you can actually see kind of where the original bend in the lead was. This is an additional pull-up they added, I'm assuming, for something. If I can get it to actually kind of go in. It was in there, something like that. Like I say, I'm guessing an additional pull-up on something that just needed a little more. That is on which hole? Well, okay, I'll solder this pin first and then come back to that one. Not as happy with that as I could be. That's better. It's through now. There's a little bit of lead on the back side of the board. So that gets this resistor in. I think we're in camera shot here. This resistor's in. It's a brown, black, red, or 1 0, and then 2 zeros for 1K. It was this one originally on the back of the board there, and I just moved one from the front to the back there to make it a little cleaner. All of the caps, as I recall, were 0.1 microfarad. There's 3 here. Was there 4 caps on there or 3? 1. I'm short one of the 0.1 microfarad disc caps, it looks like. I must have misplaced it as I was juggling stuff around here. Not that that's tragic. I've got plenty. I may have to put a replacement in for it. Well, I'm going to pause, actually probably stop the video here, and we'll pick this up in the next video because I need a break.